A student's overview of the Ageless wisdom was carefully compiled from the following books by Alice A. Bailey. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Esoteric Psychology, Volumes 1 and 2. Esoteric Healing. Esoteric Astrology. The Rays and the Initiations. Students are encouraged to download the free PDF version of this overview by following the link in the video's description, or to order a printed copy at cost from thebookpatch.com, but are advised to read the original, unabridged books in order to gain deeper insight into the ageless wisdom. Students are also invited to join our online study group at facebook.com/groups/students of the ageless wisdom. Chapter 34 Esoteric Psychology Volume 2. The Antakarana. The human soul, in contradistinction to the soul as it functions in its own kingdom, free from the limitations of human life, is imprisoned by and subject to the control of the lower energies for the major part of its experience. Then, upon the path of probation, the dual energy of the soul begins to be increasingly active, and the man seeks consciously to use his mind, and to express love wisdom on the physical plane. This is a simple statement of the objective of all aspirants. When the five energies are beginning to be used consciously and wisely in service, a rhythm is then set up between the personality and the soul. It is as if a magnetic field were then established, and these two vibrating and magnetic units, or grouped energies, begin to swing into each other's field of influence. In the early stages, this happens only occasionally and rarely. Later it occurs more constantly, and thus a path of contact is established which eventually becomes the line of least resistance, the way of familiar approach, as it is sometimes esoterically called. Thus the first half of the bridge, the Antakarana, is constructed. By the time the third initiation is undergone, this way is completed, and the initiate can pass to higher worlds at will, leaving the lower worlds far behind, or he can come again and pass upon the way that leads from dark to light, from light to dark, and from the lower worlds into the realms of light. It is with the work of the bridge builders that we are concerned. First, let it be stated that the real building of the Antakarana only takes place when the disciple is beginning to be definitely focused upon mental levels, and when therefore his mind is intelligently and consciously functioning. He must begin at this stage to have some more exact idea than has hitherto been the case as to the distinctions existing between the thinker, the apparatus of thought, and thought itself, beginning with its dual esoteric function, which is 1. The recognition of, and receptivity to, ideas. 2. The creative faculty of conscious thought form building. This necessarily involves a strong mental attitude and a reorientation of the mind to reality. As the disciple begins to focus himself on the mental plane, and this is the prime intent of the meditation work, he starts working in mental matter and trains himself in the powers and uses of thought. He achieves a measure of mind control. He can turn the searchlight of the mind in two directions, into the world of human endeavor, and into the world of soul activity. Just as the soul makes a way for itself by projecting itself in a thread or stream of energy into the three worlds, so the disciple begins consciously to project himself into the higher worlds. His energy goes forth, through the medium of the controlled and directed mind, into the world of higher spiritual mind and into the realm of the intuition. A reciprocal activity is thus set up. The effort to draw forth the intuition requires directed occult, but not aspirational, meditation. It requires a trained intelligence, so that the line of demarcation between intuitive realization and the forms of the higher psychism may be clearly seen. It requires a constant disciplining of the mind, so that it can hold itself steady in the light, and the development of a cultured right interpretation so that the intuitive knowledge which has been achieved may then clothe itself in the right thought forms. End of page 171. Subservience or obedience to the plan involves something else than a vague and misty realization that God has a plan and that we are included in it. It is more than a hiding of oneself in the shadow of the will of God. It necessitates a wise differentiation between a. the general perspective and the large world plan for the planet. b. those immediate stages of the plan in which intelligent cooperation is, at this time, demanded. This building of the Antakarana is most assuredly proceeding in the case of every dedicated aspirant. When the work is carried on intelligently and with full awareness of the desired purpose, and when the aspirant not only recognizes the process, but is alert and active in its fulfillment, then the work proceeds apace and the bridge is built. One thing only need be added in connection with this building of the Antakarana, and that is the statement of the significant fact that the more people can achieve this linking of the higher and lower aspects of the human nature, the more rapidly will the task of salvaging the world proceed. The more painstakingly and persistently this work is carried forward, the sooner will the hierarchy of the planet resume its ancient task and status in the world, and the sooner will the mysteries be restored and the world function, therefore, more consciously in line with the plan. Here and there throughout the world, in every nation and practically every week, men and women are stepping off the path of probation onto the path of discipleship. In this lies the hope of the world today. 7 Ray methods of appropriation. In considering the processes of appropriation, the following phrases should be studied, as they throw a light upon the various stages from different angles. 1. The stage of concretization and materialization. The soul takes to itself what it needs and desires for form building. 2. The stage of incarnation, taken at this time blindly. 3. The period wherein satisfaction of the desires is the major goal. These range all the way from physical desire and its satisfaction to a general and undefined desire for release. 4. The processes, in detail, of appropriating a body or bodies, a sheath or sheaths, a vehicle or vehicles, a form or forms. 5. Immersion in darkness. This was the result of desire. The darkness of ignorance was chosen and man started, through desire, to work his way from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, from the unreal to the real. Such is the great symbolic work of Masonry. It is an elucidation of the way of relinquishment. 6. The path of outgoing in order to possess. 7. Selfishness, the major characteristic of the self in relation to, and identified with, the not-self. 8. Love of possession, the prostitution of spiritual love. End of page 172. 9. Acquisitiveness, the illusion of material need. 10. The period called in the Bible, that of riotous living on the part of the prodigal son. 11. The application and use of energy for personal, selfish intent. 12. Personality life, with all that is therein implied, ambition, selfish purpose, etc. 13. Attachment to the seen, the known, and the familiar, external, objective forms. 14. The stage wherein thought forms are built, at first ignorantly, and then with deliberate selfishness. 15. The period of engrossment in the things of the kingdom of earth. 16. The world, the flesh, and the devil. On the side of soul expression, which is governed by detachment, the following phrases and sentences will give an idea of the progress and intent. 1. The stage of spiritualization and of dematerialization. The soul functions with the purpose of liberation before it, and not of further physical plane experience. 2. The relinquishment of form life. 3. The period wherein satiety is experienced, the desires have been so dominant and so often satisfied that they no longer attract. 4. The process, in detail, of liberation from a body or bodies, a sheath or sheaths, a vehicle or vehicles, a form or forms. 5. Emergence into light, a symbolic way of expressing the reverse of immersion in darkness. 6. The path of return, motivated by the wish to appropriate nothing for the separated self. The beginning of group consciousness and of group work. 7. Selflessness, the major characteristic of the soul or self. 8. Freedom from the desire to possess, freedom from acquisitiveness, and therefore the state of desirelessness. 9. The establishing of the sense of reality as the ruling principle of the life. 10. The return of the prodigal son to the father's home. 11. The application and use of energy for group purpose and in cooperation with the plan for the whole. 12. The life of the soul with all that is implied in that phrase. 13. Love of God in contradistinction to love of self. 14. Attachment to the unseen, the true, the subjective and the real, which is only possible when there has been detachment from the seen, the false, the objective and the unreal. 15. Complete liberation from the control of the lower mind. 16. The period wherein the center of interest is the kingdom of God and of the soul. 17. Reality. Formlessness. God. End of page 173. Ray methods of approach. Ray 1. The energy of will or power, the destroyer aspect. Souls on this ray are spoken of occultly as crashing their way into incarnation. They appropriate dynamically that which they require. They brook no hindrance in the satisfactions of their desires. They stand alone in a proud isolation, glorying in their strength, and their ruthlessness. These qualities have to be transmuted into that intelligent use of power which makes them powerful factors in the plan, and magnetic centers of force, gathering workers and forces around them. An illustration of this can be seen in the work of the Master Moria, who is the center, the magnetic attractive center of all esoteric groups, conferring on them, by his power, the capacity to destroy that which is undesirable in the life of the disciples. Forget not that the work of stimulating that which is needed is one of the major tasks of a master, and the power of a disciple to destroy that which limits him is greatly needed. Souls of this ray, as they come into incarnation through desire, grasp. This expresses the nature of the force demonstration employed. There is a measure of violence in their technique. They eventually take the kingdom of heaven by force. Ray 2. The energy of love wisdom. Souls on this ray use the method of gathering in, or drawing into. The soul sets up a vibration, little as we may yet grasp the real significance of that word, and that vibration affects its environment, and atoms of substance on all three planes are attracted to the central point of energy. The method is relatively gentle, when compared to the method of the first ray, and the process is somewhat longer whilst the overshadowing, carried forward prior to entering into the three worlds for purposes of appearance, is very much longer. This refers to that overshadowing of the substance to be built into form, and not to the overshadowing of the completed form, i.e. the child in the mother's womb. In the first case, it might be said that souls on the first ray are sudden and rapid in their desire to incarnate, and in the methods employed. Souls on the second ray are slower in coming to that impulsive action, in the sense of impulse to action and not impulse in time, which leads to the occult manufacture of an appearance with which to manifest. Souls on this ray, as they come into incarnation through desire, attract. They are magnetic more than they are dynamic, they are constructive, and they work along the line which is, for all lives and forms, the line of least resistance within our universe. Ray 3. The energy of active intelligence. Just as the grasping and attracting are terms applicable to the methods of the two first rays, so a process of selective manipulation is characteristic of this third ray. This method is totally different in its technique to that of the two mentioned above. It might be said that the note which generates the activity set up by souls on this ray, is such that atoms of the different planes are moved as if consciously responding to a selective process. The vibratory activity of the soul makes itself felt, and atoms collect from widely different points in response to a certain quality in the vibration. It is far more selective than in the case of the second ray. Just as souls in the first case seem to grasp indiscriminately what they need, and force the substance thus grasped into the form or appearance required, in doing it with the quality needed in a dynamic and forceful way, and just as souls on the second ray set up a motion which gathers material out of the immediately surrounding environment, and imposes on it, through magnetic attraction, the desired quality, so in the case of souls on the third ray the required material is chosen here and there. But that chosen already has the needed quality, note this difference, and nothing whatever is imposed. It will be apparent, therefore, that substance itself exists in three major categories, and that these three categories are the correspondences in substance to the three persons of the Trinity or to the three bodies of incarnated man. They are also the analogy in the third aspect of divinity, the life of the third person of the Trinity, to the quality of the three periodical vehicles through which manifestation takes place. End of page 174. One division or type of this substance is dynamically electrified, and from this all first-ray egos choose the material needed in the three worlds. Another type of substance is magnetically electrified, and from it all second-ray egos select what they, in time and space, require in order to manifest. The third type of substance is diffusively electrified. I know of no better word to express the intent, and all third-ray egos take from it their needed quota of substance from which to build the forms for manifestation. As regards the methods, techniques and types of substance used by souls on the remaining four minor rays, they are necessarily qualified by the characteristics of the third major ray, which eventually synthesizes them. The 7 laws of soul, or group life. We come now to a section of our study of the soul and its life which is of real moment to all who live, or begin to live, and function as conscious souls, through definite alignment and at-one-ment. The law of sacrifice. Esoteric name, the law of those who choose to die. Symbol, a rosy cross with a golden bird. Ray energy, outpouring forth ray, at-oneing energy. The section upon which we now enter in our studies will be difficult and controversial. The thread which will guide us out of the bewildering maze of thought into which we must perforce enter, is the golden one of group love, group understanding, group relations and group conduct. It means the impulse of giving. The whole secret of the doctrines of the forgiveness of sins and of the at-one-ment lies hid in this simple phrase. It is the basis of the Christian doctrine of love and sacrifice. Hence the emphasis laid, in the Piscan age and through the influence of Christianity, upon just these two things, forgiveness and atonement. That man, as usual, distorted and misinterpreted the teaching and the truth, and that it fell, as does all else at present, under the glamour and illusion of the astral plane, plus the Piscan influence, is true. Man's thought dominated and distorted the ideal and produced such a damnable doctrine as the elect of God, the chosen of the Lord, or the sole people to benefit by the sacrifice and death of the great Son of God, and who pass, due to the merits of that vicarious death, into a state of bliss in heaven, simply because of an emotional choice, which ignores millions of those who have made no such choice, nor had the opportunity to do so. The symbolic activity of the great teacher of Nazareth will be properly understood and its significance will be properly appreciated only when group implications are more carefully studied. The meaning of sacrifice and of death come into their rightful place in the human consciousness, and the law of giving, with all that that entails, is correctly understood and applied. There are 3 rules which are important to disciples at this time. First, see to it that you permit no rift to appear in the inner relation in which you stand to each other. The integrity of the inner band of servers must be preserved intact. Secondly, pursue your own duty and task, shoulder your own responsibility, and then leave your fellow disciples to do the same, free from the impact of your thought and criticism. The ways and means are many, the points of view vary with every personality. The principle of work is love for all men and service to the race, preserving at the same time a deeper inner love for those with whom you are destined to work. Each soul grows into the way of light through service rendered, through experience gained, through mistakes made, and through lessons learnt. That necessarily must be personal and individual. But the work itself is one. The path is one. The love is one. The goal is one. These are the points that matter. Thirdly, preserve ever in work the attitude of mind which must grow out of the two rules above, faithfully followed. Your point of view and consciousness are your own, and therefore, are for you, right. Not necessarily is that which seems so clear to you and of such vital importance to you, of the same value or importance to your brothers. Your important principle may be realized by an abler mind than yours and by a more advanced disciple as embodying an aspect of a greater principle, an interpretation of a principle, correct and proper at a certain time, but capable of a different application at another time, and by another mind. End of page 175. Under the law of sacrifice, these three rules might be interpreted thus. 1. Relinquish or sacrifice the age-old tendency to criticize and adjust another's work, and thus preserve the inner group integrity. More plans for service have gone astray and more workers have been hindered by criticism than by any other major factor. 2. Relinquish or sacrifice the sense of responsibility for the actions of others, and particularly of disciples. See that your own activity measures up to theirs, and in the joy of struggle and on the way of service the differences will disappear and the general good will be achieved. 3. Relinquish the pride of mind which sees its way and its interpretations to be correct and true, and others false and wrong. This is the way of separation. Adhere to the way of integration which is of the soul and not of the mind. End of chapter 34.